And my Twitter handle is littlecope0903. Follow me. You'll hear lots of angry feminist rants and also random things about tech because it's one of my favorite topics. You'll hear about accessibility a lot. It's a very important topic to me. So I wanted to sort of get a feel for my audience. So who here is completely new to coding? Okay, a few people. So does everybody here generally know like HTML? It doesn't need to be advanced, but like the basic knowledge of HTML. So if I show HTML on the screen, you're not going to be like, what the hell is that? Okay, great. Sweet. Okay, so this should not confuse people too much then, which is good. Cool. So this is a topic I'm super, super passionate about. It's accessibility, and accessibility to me just talks about inclusion, and that's honestly my biggest passion in this industry is making sure inclusion is a big proponent in expanding the technology. So, all right, let's get started. So what is accessibility? Do any of you guys have any ideas of like how you would define it? Yes? No? Yeah.
Designing your programs and your code with keeping in mind whether or not individuals are going to be able to access it.
Correct, yeah. So basically web accessibility means that people of all abilities can access your website or your app. I should have put that in there, but you one-up me, it's cool. All right. So basically it is going to be talking about the diversity of abilities. So that includes auditory and hearing, cognitive and neurological, physical and motor skills, speech, blindness and low vision. I don't actually have time to cover all of these. I wish I did because I love this topic so much. But these are all things that are sort of included. Also, something I think can kind of be included is like language, like where you're from, what language you speak. But that's not in the technical definition, but I think it's starting to expand, which is pretty relevant in my opinion. So you're going to hear a lot of vocabulary. It's going to get through the boring stuff first. So this is something you hear in the DC Techosphere. Section 508 compliance. I hear it a lot because my agency works on a lot of government sites. So basically this is a little blurb from HHS.gov. It just requires that all website content be accessible to people with disabilities, applies to web applications, web pages, and all attached files on the internet, and as well the internet. This is Section 508 of, I believe, the Rehabilitation Act, or ADA. I'm really bad with law numbers, okay, I apologize. But so that's not so much what I'm going to be focusing on here. What I'm going to be focusing on is WCAG. I don't know if people pronounce it like WCAGA, but WCAG I think sounds really cool, and that stands for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. So there are 3 levels. A, which is the parentheses here are my interpretation, bare minimum, AA, happy medium, AAA, highest. And what I believe everybody should be aiming for is AA at a minimum. AAA is sometimes hard to obtain. If you can do it, great, fabulous. But it's not something you're going to get sued over. So AA is the happy medium that I think everybody should be striving for. So these are the principles. Everything should be perceivable depending on what senses you're using. Operable using a mouse, keyboard, or assistive technology. Understandable, clear content. This is the one that's like hard sometimes with government agencies who get very, very wordy and verbose. And they should be robust to a variety of browsers. So it should support a variety of browsers depending on, if you're looking at your Google Analytics and seeing what types or where your audiences are coming from, it should be supporting a majority of those, if not all. I put a link on this slide more about the principles because there's a lot to talk about with it, and quite frankly, I don't have as much time as I'd like. So, why should I care? Why are a few reasons why you would care about accessibility? Why are you here today?
Colorblind.
I'm sorry?
I'm colorblind.
You're colorblind, okay. work for the government. Okay. All right. Gesundheit. All right. So I have a little case study. All right. Disclaimer. Not going to put any of my political opinions out there, and I really ask, because I'm pro-inclusion, I really ask that nobody here scuffs at either candidate, but I think this is extremely, extremely interesting and extremely, extremely relevant. Is the candidates, you might have probably saw when I was flipping around that you saw Hillary Clinton's page up. So their donation page, let's see how accessible these pages are. So I have both up Hillary Clinton's donate page and Donald Trump's donate page. So I have this tool that I'll talk a little bit more about. It's called the Wave tool. Don't worry too much about what it does. Just know that it's a accessibility tool that you can download on Chrome or Firefox. It's this little thing right hither. And let's see. Okay. Can you guys see this right here? I don't know if you cannot see far away. This says 18 errors. That means that somebody with an assistive technology might not be able to see that. So let's look a little bit at what they are. Wave is really, really cool because it has styles, and sometimes there's like hidden elements on a page that are just for assistive technologies. So you can take off the styles and sort of see all of the HTML without any fancy styling. Basically, if you put no CSS on it. So here we have missing alternative text. We'll talk a little bit more about what that means. Missing form labels. We'll talk about what that means. Empty form labels, empty buttons here in particular. So I'm going to be a little critical right now. I'm going to be critical of both, equally critical. So these buttons right here, to me, are supposed to show progress of where you are in the form. They don't have any functionality, but the way this was built shows that they have functionality. If I try clicking on any of these buttons, nothing happens. You know, if somebody is low vision or poor sighted, how are they going to know? They're just using the HTML to gather meaning from the site. How are they going to know that that doesn't have any meaning? Like, how would that make you feel if you had, like, and I'm actually asking, so how would you feel if you couldn't get through and you wanted to donate to Hillary Clinton and you had no ability to understand what those buttons were? Like, how would you feel?
You just give up,
right? Give up? Okay. Anybody else? Frustrated? I'm sorry? I'm so sorry. You wouldn't donate, yeah?
That's what I mean.
You wouldn't donate? Anything else? Okay. So, those are all really great answers. So she has 18 errors. We're going to go to Donald Trump's donation page. Woof! 27 errors. Okay, we're going to look a little bit at what these are. So I'm going to take off the styling. So it looks like 23 out of these 27 are missing form labels. So right here we have enter your information. So if you look at all of these, do you guys know, I don't know, can you see this? Sorry, it's like a small TV. But these are all, this is your billing address. And right down here is your credit card number. So, like, yeah.
So what does that mean? Someone's
So,
using
I'll talk a little bit more about that, but basically what it means is there is no label that is associated with it. So if you are going through a screen reader, you're going to this input area and you're like, okay, so this is just a field. What do I do with this field? What do I put in here? Like, imagine being like you're putting in sensitive information like your credit card number and you don't know which field you're supposed to put it in. And that's like, I don't know about you, I'm kind of neurotic. I'll just, put that out there right now. I do not want to put my credit card in a field where it's not supposed to be, okay? Like, that's just not something I'm a fan of. So, for me, like, that's a big deal, and it's also not that hard of an issue to remediate. So, there's a huge, like, I feel like campaign site culture is very much like, chug it out, chug it out, chug it out, chug it out. But this accessibility thing becomes an afterthought. But, like, you were saying you were losing money. People are not going to donate to you. And this is something that I would say at most all of these errors, these aren't even the worst errors that you can get. And I think you could probably solve these in 2 hours. Is 2 hours worth all these donations? I think so. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that accessibility has trickier things to make accessible, particularly when you're trying to undo things that CMSs do. But this type of stuff is very easy. Adding labels to HTML and associating them with a field, it's so easy. You can Google it. I wasn't even that good at this before, like, 6 months ago, and I figured it out really quickly. So, all right. So, in summary, why should I care? Empathy and inclusion, because I'm a good person and I want people to be able to access the information like I'm giving anybody who has no disabilities. Good for business. We talked about how they could be potentially losing money. Imagine Amazon, it wasn't accessible. You couldn't search for things. You couldn't, that's going to lose Amazon money. Something I actually heard is they're not part of my audience. This gives me the rage, guys. People with disabilities are always a subset of your target audience. Always a subset. And this is where I get a little ragey. I apologize. I'm a passionate person. But they are always, always, always part of your audience. They're a subset of your audience. There are blind journalists. There are people who have motor skills, but they are imputing data. What if the data, the database software or whatever is not accessible? How are they going to be able to do that? So it's this, and then there's the part, if none of that appeals to you, you could get sued. Target got sued because they had a sale, I believe, I should have researched this before so I actually knew what I was talking about, but I'm pretty positive that they had an image about a sale, and there's no descriptive text about it. Or no, so basically people who are blind did not have access to that sale, and that's discrimination. Yep, that's real. Okay, so now that I've talked about why you should care, I'm going to talk a little bit about the how, because we want to know, okay, so what? We care now. What are some things we can start getting started on? Okay, so alternative text. Providing textual alternative for non-text content in web page. This is most typically images. So basically what you have to remember is if you see an image, what is the purpose of that image? Is it an image that just displays content? Is it an image that's a link that has function? We want to make sure that we're putting that in the alternative attribute. So also not really necessarily for screen readers, but it also displays when a file doesn't load. If you have wonky internet and the images aren't loading, you might see sometimes that there's a little description thing, a little description text. That's what alternative text also is. And then there's also the SEO aspect. It provides semantic meaning to images, which really is helpful for search engines. So, a couple examples. This is bad. It has alt text, so actually, the worst would be no alt text at all. So this isn't awful, but it could be better. So this is a picture of the White House, and it's lit up with a rainbow. So the alternative tag is White House with rainbow. It's better than nothing, but the purpose of this image, this image was the picture of the White House when the Supreme Court legalized gay marriage in the whole entire country. And this was a celebration of that. That is the meaning from this image. So we want to make sure that non-sighted users have that meaning. So this is better. All right, so the alt text is White House lit with rainbow lights to celebrate legal gay marriage. Significantly better. Conveys the meaning. Okay, semantic HTML. Using headings, lists, and other structural HTML elements appropriately and how they were designed, making sure they have clear meaning. So I know if you're working with CMSs, you might not be able to do this as much as you want to because they're always divs on divs on divs on divs. But using header tags, navigation tags, section tags, article, footer tags, using them appropriately because they give a lot more meaning to where you are in the page. And then what I'm going to talk a little bit more about is using hierarchical headers correctly and using lists correctly. So I've seen this a lot when designers give you a mock-up, and there's like sometimes text that just has all sorts of different sizes because it looks pretty. So there's a structural order for headers in particular. It should always start with an H1, then goes to an H2, and then an H3, and H4, logical order. So, like, you can always skip back up, right? But you want to make sure that everything is like a subset of each other, and making sure that that is categorized properly. You get what I'm saying? A little bit? Cool. So I've seen this quite a bit, is people will skip headers because, things will, oh god, I wish the screen was bigger so you can see this. But basically, this is an H1, about us. Here's a P tag. Here's some text. Great, about us page. And then an H3. Here's our mission. Dad, do not do that at all. Okay, good. So here's the H1 about us. Here's some text and the P tag, and H2 tag, our mission. That's much better. It's a subset of an about us. It gives us that context, and it doesn't confuse us. Because sometimes, I guess, if we went to an H1 and H3, we're like, wait, did we miss some context that we needed to know about? That would be confusing. Oh, accessible tables. Oh my god, so many people are bad at this, including myself at one point. All right, I'm gonna say that we all are very, very bad at this. But basically, tables should have appropriate headers. If you get nothing else out of this, headers. Just headers. That's the only thing I want you to get out of this if you get nothing else. If you get more, great. But headers. Making sure that data cells are associated with their appropriate header tags. So using TD and TH appropriately, just because if you're newer to HTML, I don't want you to stress out too much over this. Just more keep it in mind. Because I'm kind of going to go through a few examples that might get confusing. And by the way, if you cannot see most of these, I will be having this online. I'll be posting it on my Twitter, and it's also in the Hackathon. Okay, so really quickly, just so you can see what this is. So this is bad. So imagine, actually, you know what? Don't even look at the code for now. Imagine, you are a non-sighted user, and you are going to a table. And then you just hear all of a sudden, you're like, name, age, Lindsey, 27. That's how old I am, by the way. So you just hear all of that, and then you hear so much more data, and that gets confusing. You're not sure what things are being associated with what. Especially this isn't going to be as bad because it's only one data point, Lindsey, and my age is 27. But if you get multiple, imagine how confusing that would be if you just didn't know what things were associated with. It could get really, really annoying. This is a little better. So I wish the screen was bigger. So we have the first table row, which contains two table headers: th, name, and tag th, th, age, and tag th. Th stands for the headers. And then we end the row. Then the next row is just the data cells: TD, Lindsey, TD, 27, and then the end of the table row. But this is even better. So we have something that is called the scope attribute. This is actually something I learned while I was doing research for this. I did not know about this, and I thought this was super, super cool. So it makes it even more specific. So imagine that we had more data besides just age, I don't know, favorite food or favorite animal, or weight. I don't want to talk about that, but just all of those. Having th scope column, so that indicates that, okay, this is a column header. But then the th scope row, Lindsey, everything after that is associated with mine, right? So this is I am also a header, and all this data coming after is associated with me. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. This is something it's a little hard for me to explain, so if you guys are unclear what I mean, I will try to do better. Accessible forms. So this is a little bit of what I was starting to talk about with those donation pages. So providing users with clear instructions, so formatting instructions, which fields are required, making sure everything is keyboard accessible, so including select lists. Text fields are usually very easily accessible by keyboards, but making sure you can select things up and down, and making sure you can select stuff from like, you know, your state or whatever. And what I was saying before, making sure all fields have a label and associate it with the proper input, even if you hide it. Like sometimes you can do a class to sort of hide it from display because it's ugly on the design or whatever, but that way you're not discriminating against your low-sighted or no-sighted users. So this is bad. So right here, text is an input type text, placeholder, search, ID, search. So there's no label, right? We do have a placeholder text, but in my opinion, that's not good enough. The screen readers prefers labels. That's bad. Okay, here's good. So label 4, the 4 attribute is the way you connect to the ID. So that's how the screen reader will tell which label is associated with which. So I believe that submit types don't need them. I think it's only for things where you're actually inputting data that you need labels for. Accessible links. Oh, I'm sorry.
For the label tags, sometimes they have name attributes.
Yeah, I mean those are helpful, but the one that's really super important is 4.
And ID?
So the ID is the one that's associated with the input itself. So those two should be the same. So on the label, the 4, the property of the attribute 4 should be the same as the ID. Does that make sense? Yeah. It's one of those things that in practice, once you start practicing it, it becomes a lot more second nature, but it makes things a lot easier. So accessible links. The default functionality of your of any browser is being able to tab through links and access them with the Enter key. This is something you generally don't have to worry about, but there are times where people make empty links, and that's bad. And so, have you ever seen like a drop-down menu where the top level doesn't actually do anything? It's just the bottom level. That is bad. Just don't do it. Don't do it. And it's not good for SEO and all that jazz. And but it's very common, you know, to see that. And they'll put like a pound sign as the href. So that's really that's pretty much disabling the common default functionality of the browser. Another one is something that a lot of your clients or your content writers might not be really in tune about is using the word click here. Don't do it. Because basically there is a way that you can sort of just tab through and announce the links. And if you're not sighted and you're like, oh, I know there's this one thing I want to talk about, but I know it's further down the page, so I'm just skipping through all the links. Imagine if you were like, okay, I'm trying to find something about dresses, and all you're hearing is click here, click here, click here, click. What the heck? Like, what am I trying? Like, that doesn't help me at all. So making sure you're providing a list. So resources about dresses or something like that. So this is bad. This is right here. This one, the href empty link on mouse over equals drop down menu. That's the one that I was telling you about that you shouldn't do. Empty link that creates that whole drop down effect. And this is also what you shouldn't do. The a tag equals or href equals some link. Click here and link to find out more. I notice I don't have a second part because the good is don't do it. Then there's check out our a tag, some link, whatever, resources about coding, and tag to find out more. Oops, I accidentally did it. Don't do that. But anyway, so that way, if I'm skipping through and I'm trying to find resources on coding, I find the link resources on coding. Great, I know what I'm looking for now. Skipping repetitive links. So imagine you have a motor skill issue, right? So you're using your keyboard to tab through everything. A lot of times we have a lot of, I'm going to say crap, navigation, utility menus, search things, and we're like, we just want to get to the body of the page. Usually what we can do is we can create a skip link. So an href that goes to the ID of main content area. So usually you can have an ID that has main or whatever, and then it gives us an ability to skip all that gunk. If we already know the structure of the site, we just want to get to the information. So this can be visible, which designers usually don't like, invisible, or invisible until it receives a keyboard focus, so invisible until we hit it with the tab key. And it should always be the first thing. Okay, so I wanted to put a bad example, but the bad example is just not having it, so it's all commented out. But basically, yeah, this is the code that's commented out. But good. So we have, underneath the body tag, the first link we have is an A, href equals pound main content. The text is skip to main content, right? And then this is where all the navigation gunk is. And then the main ID equals main content. And then that way I would jump just there first. Avoiding color for meaning. So, as we have here, you said that you are colorblind, right? Okay, so this is something that's actually, have you guys heard, I can't remember what sports ball teams, but there's a huge deal thing where I think it was like the Jets and another team. They basically had red and green jerseys and were doing a football game, right? And the NFL got nailed for this because I think there's something like 13 million red, green colorblind people, and you had no idea. You had no idea what interceptions were happening, who was tackling whom. Like, you know, it's just like basically a bunch of gray on gray tackling each other. You know, it's like, okay, I have no idea what's going on in this football game unless I can really, really tune in to see what's on the helmets. Don't do that. Same thing with web. Do not do that. If you have to use color to do to convey meaning, make sure you have a fallback. So this is bad. We have 2 green fields. First name, last name, red is email. So if for some reason there's like all these required fields, right? And we're trying to tell the user, hey, you forgot a field that was required. If you're just doing this, it might frustrate your user if they're colorblind, particularly red and green colorblind. So you want to make sure that even if we want to use color to make it prettier, we have a fallback for people who are colorblind. So this is better, a little better. We have, okay, you got this field, you got this field, you got this. A little better, but it might not be perfect because you're like, is my email address wrong? Maybe you just formatted it incorrectly. So what's even better is having checkmark, X, and also what the error is. That's the most accessible here. Okay, so these are like the main intro levels. There's a few other items that I found important. This wasn't in the intro level when I was doing research, but this is stuff I also found really important, and I wanted to make sure that even if I didn't go into it in huge detail, I gave you like the, hey, you should look up more about this item. Visually hidden. Never use display none in your CSS. Instead, use a visually hidden class. Basically, what this does is sort of position it off the screen, so screen readers can still access it, but it's not hidden, it's not messing up the design. So, for example, if you have a label that doesn't go with the design, you can put like a class, the class can be named anything like that makes sense, like element, invisible, visually hidden, whatever. But if you have that, making sure that that class also is something that tells you what it's doing and then has all of these. And it basically makes it really small and pushes it to the side. So, all right, accessible JavaScript. I started talking a little bit about how like hovers and kind of taking away default functionality of a browser is bad. A lot of times you can actually use JavaScript for good, and I wish I had like a whole entire talk to talk about this because it's like its own talk on itself. But I just the trouble points tend to be navigation, hiding content, lack of user control, and disorienting the user from normal functionality. So ARIA labels. ARIA is basically quite literally designed for accessibility. you know, using, it stands for Accessible Rich Internet Applications, and it provides missing context needed for assistive technologies. So the role attribute is the one I see the most, and you know, like role menu or navigation, stuff like that. So I would encourage you guys starting to put roles onto important aspects of your website, like your navigation, your main content, stuff like that. Clear focus states. So have you guys ever tried tabbing through your website? Yeah, you guys notice that the default is like a little, it's a little like dotted line, I think, like a gray dotted line. It kind of tells you where it is. Basically, the focus is like the styling that's associated with when your keyboard focuses onto it. So when we're tabbing through, making sure that there are clear focus states. Like, for example, I was doing, it's actually really nice prep for this talk because at work I was doing accessibility testing all week. So I was like, great, I have so much prep. And writing all the tickets and stuff like that about the accessibility fixes that needed to happen. On one of them, there was focus state, and it was clear on everything else, but there was this one area where the contrast of it was like kind of wonky on some places, and then you could kind of see it, and you're like, what is this even pointing to? I have no idea. So it was like an image one, so it kind of made it really hard to tell what was being focused on. So making sure that your focus states are really clear. And they're very important for links and forms. So whenever you're on a certain field, make things in type, making sure that the user knows where it is. And also, so I don't have any motor disabilities, but I love tabbing through my keyboard and going through, like, it just makes it easier for me, to be honest, to get through things. I hate using a mouse now. So, all right. So these are a few helpful resources and links. A lot of this is stuff that I actually used with help creating this. So if you need any sort of information about this type of thing, and also I have so many people ask what this framework is for my slides. It's reveal.js, and it's fabulous, and it's great. I highly recommend it. And it's also, if you're new to coding, it's really a nice way to test your coding and understanding things like SAS and like grunt and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. And here are a few free tools. The No Coffee Vision Simulator. My friend Beth Soderberg actually recommended this to me. And it's so cool. I disabled it because, oh wait. I'm gonna enable it. Okay, I have time to show you. I'm gonna enable it because I disabled it because it was distracting me. Okay, so no coffee. I'm gonna turn off Wave. No internet connection. All right, that's weird. Okay, well, basically what this does is I wonder if it's gonna, it might not be working because of the internet but basically you can kind of you can sort of put yourself in the shoes of somebody who has like color blindness, a certain type of color blindness or deficiency, some kind of any sort of blocked vision field over here, so central, peripheral, corner, side, large spots, blah, 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 sort of glare, like any type of vision, not like, even if you just like need glasses and don't have them. And so that's great. The Wave tool, which is what I was using before, is also fabulous. It can help you track down errors. A-Checker, basically what A-Checker is it stands for Accessibility Checker, go figure, and you can just put in a link and like of one page, and it will tell you all the errors that are happening on your site, on that particular page. It's free, so it doesn't do your whole site, and then just your keyboard. Am I able to tab through it? Am I able to do every single piece of functionality on this via my keyboard? Or am I like unable to? So like, for example, I was doing accessibility testing, and they had this really cool like search functionality where I clicked on the search icon and then the search field appeared. I couldn't access that with my keyboard. accessibility issue. Like, I'm giving that person the ability to, I want to give that person the ability to actually, like, use the same functionality as somebody who is using their mouse. So, cool. So, I'm done my spiel. Any questions? Yes.
Did you see Chipotle's Love Story game that's out this week for a free coupon?
I didn't.
Okay, well everyone, Chipotle has a free coupon if you go on and you play this little memory card game. But how would that work for people that need accessibility? Like, what if you can't?
I would challenge you. I would challenge you to see. I would challenge you to see like what type of accessibility technologies like. Be like, hey, do they have good alternative tech? Try to access it through your keyboard. There's this one. I don't think it's as good as some of the other ones, but another resource that before I post this up, or I'll update this in the next couple of minutes, another extension is Chromevox. It's highly annoying, just warning you, but it will tell you what a screen reader will say. So, it'll be like, this is a table, this is what this table says, so you can kind of like hear what a screen reader might be reading to a user. It's really helpful. I use it a lot in testing when I'm being really, really, really neurotic, and making sure that everything is really, really good to go. So I'll put that on and make sure that that's also on the slides so you guys have access to them. But yeah, I would challenge, I haven't heard of it, so I can't answer that, but I would definitely challenge you to be like, like think about it. Be like, how would somebody who had some sort of, one type of disability, like how would they be like unable to, or how would they be able to do this? Like thinking kind of critically, and then you can tweet at them and be like, "Hey, we should make it acceptable." It's kind of fun doing that, and they're like, "Oh no." Okay.
So we have a navigation bar that's built with CSS covers, and it looks cool, but it's not passable.
Ooh.
When you suggest?
So I could go on and on, but I would do a little bit of research on JavaScript. I haven't built one yet. This is something that I just transitioned back to development from TPMing, or tech project managing. So I'm back to the developer side, and I haven't had to do that yet, but I know that there's a lot of ways that you can do focus states, because focus is really helpful for tabbing through things, because it tells you, okay, what does it do when I hit this link? And then if it doesn't have a focus, it probably doesn't. Using JavaScript as your friend and not your foe is also a good one. Looking up things like, there's like focus states, and I think this is something that I'm like trying to remember from this person who's super awesome with this stuff, and he tells me all these things, and now my brain is failing me, but I would definitely look into things like focus states, because focus states is the first place I would start, because there's a good likelihood that the submenu navigations don't have focus states. Look out for empty links. Empty links is probably a big offender there, because your screen reader is probably going to be like, nope, I don't know what to do with this. And if there's an empty link that's nested above it, it's not going to know what to do with anything. So that's what I noticed is I started building my personal site, and I got this really cool like hamburger menu that the toggle was an empty link, and now I just can't tab to any of my menu links. So I'm pretty positive that that's one of the things that's really screwing it up, because they're just links, they're not anything special. And I think the fact that this is like nested above or something like, I could see that being a huge impact.
I have a question. About like the process of making the standards. So you mentioned 508. I don't know what other standards are out there. Like how are those the creation of those standards like inclusive of themselves? Like who's defining what questions are being asked and how they're being addressed?
So one of my favorite resources, which I did link, I don't need to remember to put it back up because I did link it on here, is WebAIM. No, I keep forgetting. This is an accessibility issue. I mean, lack of internet. WebAIM is a very, very good resource for all the things. In fact, I probably took a lot of I actually forced myself to learn more about accessibility by doing this talk because it was something I was really passionate about. I knew a lot about it, but I was like, I want to make sure I'm giving people the tools that I didn't have when I started learning about this. So I made sure I was looking at this, and this had so many great examples of where to start. So there's a lot of different aspects of it. Like, I'd say like three. If I were to categorize it, and this is not official by any means, how you're developing it, the content, and the design. So contrast, like we were talking about, if there's fancy contrast that doesn't have any accessibility backups, or if making sure that you're like, oh, I don't see a label for that, I have to make sure that I'm building that into the dev. Thinking about that. So there's different portions of where it's important. So, like, in what stages. Because, for example, if you're doing a CMS migration site, you can't really focus that much on the content right now. Like, their content is their content. We'll worry about it later. But let's make sure that we're developing all of their templates to be accessible. Like, using proper headers and all of that. Making sure that we can tab through the search bar. Making sure we can tab through the navigation. That's all stuff we start at the beginning. Because let me tell you, it is a lot harder to go back when you've styled everything and you've made your headers so pretty, and then all of a sudden you have to redesign all of your H2s because you made it in H3 originally, and then you have to go and be like, oh man, the style guide doesn't say these H2s should be that small, but this is what it's supposed to be. You know what I mean? Like, thinking about that type of thing. I have been screwed on that when I did not know as much about accessibility, and we had to go back and redo a lot of styling. So that's something that can be kind of like detrimental. Designing, making sure that if you are reviewing a design internally, being like, hey, that bright green on that red, I don't even have color blindness, and I can't even understand what that is. Like, imagine somebody who has, like, poor sight. I'm hoping that, because I think that would look ugly, but let's hope a designer isn't giving that to you, but, making sure you're flagging things for designers, too, because once it's approved, it's a lot harder to be like, hey, by the way, guys, we had this accessibility thing on our contract, and you approved a non-accessible design. Sorry, gotta redesign, or gotta change your colors, or change your color template, or whatever. That's a hard conversation to have. So it's like, does that answer your question? I mean, it's like the standards. I would definitely refer to WebAIM first. There's a webaim.org/intro, and that is a really good place to start. In fact, a lot of my presentation came directly from there. So definitely, look at that. There's a huge link, and then there's nested elements of things you can think about. It's such a great resource, and it gives a lot of, the visually hidden code. They suggested that. So, that CSS, so you don't have to remember. So, yeah.
In general, if you were to look at a cross-section of front-end development or just web development in general, how prevalent is this? How big of a problem, or what's the level of awareness?
So, it's getting better. It's still kind of, I'm really excited that, all of you guys are here because you clearly have heard of it and care about it. But, you guys aren't representative of the entire world, sadly. And there's a lot of people who just don't understand the impact of what it is. So the prevalence, I would say, is medium. But when I say prevalence, I mean awareness. So the awareness is medium. The prevalence is high because now, people, for example, people can sue you if they can't access the same things. If you're feeling discriminated against because you can't access a sale that somebody who's sighted can, that is actual discrimination. So that's the type of lawsuit that you can get. So I would say prevalence is super high and people should be caring about it. Not just for legal reasons, but because, you want to be sympathetic to other people. But that's just me being passionate. So, but yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. So if you guys have people who have trouble buying in, always go with the legal and money standpoint. Works really well. Be like, yeah, it might cost us money, but we might not get sued. That works usually out really well. So, but yeah, the empathy and inclusion, sometimes it's harder to sell that among your bosses. So I would definitely go with the money and legal route if you really are having trouble with buy-in. And also the fact that they're a subset of our audience. They're like, oh, well, we don't really, somebody who is in a wheelchair won't be using that product, and it's like, well, we're discriminating against them. Like, why can't they use our product? Like, they should always be a subset of your audience and not an audience itself. So, did that answer your question? Sorry, it's a little bit of an open-ended answer. So,
It's actually similar to a story I heard about a group of colorblind men in Miami suing the state or the city because all of the traffic lights are sideways over there for hurricanes. Otherwise, there's a risk of it whipping off and hurting somebody. So they're suing them for discrimination. But I don't think it's going to get very far.
I mean, yeah, but like that's a valid point because they have to figure out a way that doesn't screw up with hurricanes, but that also conveys color. So, for example, maybe a good way to do that is having like symbols within those lights.
Yeah, there's usually a little light underneath, but there's no standard. Some cities will light it when it's green, and some cities will light it when it's red. The middle ground is to have fixed traffic lights to pillars on the right and left. That way, it's fixed to something, and it's not swinging, but it's also the right.
Like, even if you're like, they wouldn't get very far, but there's like a point, like, if it's sideways, somebody who is colorblind, who has learned the standards of, okay, red's on top, yellow's in the middle, green's on the bottom, like, that's a standard, right? That's a learned standard. We all know that. We learned that in driver's ed. So, normal places, colorblind people, like, wouldn't have trouble accessing a traffic light. But that's a safety concern. And you have I think you have a right to sue if you're like, I can't tell how to be safe in my car. I don't want to die. I think that's reasonable. So. I saw you had a question?
I guess I had two questions.
Sure.
I usually work on the back end, so front end accessibility for Udemy. Between like front end developers and designers, who's really, I guess, whose responsibility is to drive the application or the website towards more accessibility? Is it more on the designer side? Is it more on the front end developer side?
Oh, that's a tough question.
If you're like a developer asking for more accessibility, do you get pushback from the designers if they say that undermine kind of like the brand of the application or the website? Like, I'm just wondering sort of how does that play out, or does it just kind of depend on the team?
Yeah. My answer is going to be it's everybody's responsibility, but the real answer is it's like it is the company's responsibility. If we're providing products, we want to provide good products, right? And if we provide good products, everybody should be able to use them, right? Everybody in our target audience should be able to use them. So when it comes down to it, a designer should be aware, hey, this person might not see this in my application. A front-end developer would be like, hey, so these headers have to be hierarchical. Like, I have to create a template so that's like that. And then it comes down to, like, when content entry is not my responsibility. We built you a CMS so you could enter your own content. So then it becomes the content admin's. What's that word again? The content admin's responsibility to understand like the hierarchical structure of their content. So it's kind of hard, like, because when it comes down to it, it's such a new topic that there has to be like one passionate driving factor. Like, I'm a loudmouth feminist, and I'm like pro inclusion, yay! I kind of am fortunate enough that my company, we cared about accessibility because we worked on a lot of government sites. But now it's actually like we're building it into all of our contracts, and even if it's not in our previous contracts, that's like a cost we're willing to eat because it's important. And we're fixing things for free for like things that we didn't address before. So it's like it's a really big standard. I'm very lucky in that aspect, but I would say being passionate and having that like money and legal argument in your back pocket is really, really important. And if you get nothing else from this talk, it'd be like the passion, at least, to be able to talk to your bosses and really get them on board with this. So I am definitely out of time. Sorry, guys. But thank you so much for coming. Tweet me. My Twitter handle is Little Cope.